Okay, so we're going to start with exercise 123. And I think this is a really important one. I'll also start by saying I apologize. I have a cold. I will sound terrible on this, but it is what it is. I have to get through it somehow, just like you guys would. I also will do my very best not to get any one of you sick. I brought my little bottle of hand sanitizer. So I'm trying. I don't want you guys to get it. Anyway. So if there are strange gaps when I'm talking, my brain just turned off for a little while. Bear with me, right? All right. So today's actually a really important concept to understand in the world of AutoCAD, and that is that there are two different kind of spaces that we work in AutoCAD. And thus far, everything that you've done is in model space, which basically means that it's full-size drawing, right? We draw a wall. It's 6 inches thick. We draw it at 6 inches thick. So there's no scaling involved. There's nothing other than you draw everything full size. The big thing about that is part of what makes this program really powerful is that when we draw it full size, we can get a bunch of outputs at different sizes down the road if we want to. So nothing is drawn in scale yet. When we're in model space, the background is black, and we draw in white. When we switch to paper space, the background turns white, and we draw in black. So we're seeing it as if there is a sheet of paper. And so right now, I'm still in model space. You see that this is kind of the finalized version of what we drew yesterday, or excuse me, on Monday, where I have the 4 elevations folded out, I have the floor plan folded out, and I've got the line weights assigned to it so that it's virtually ready to go. Okay. At the bottom of the page here, you see that there's a tab, and I know this is always hard for you guys to see because it's behind me, right? But there's a little tiny tab that says Model on it, bottom left corner. You'll probably see it. It'll say Model on it. And then next to it, you probably have Layout 1, Layout 2, maybe a few more. Okay. I already have used Layout 1 and 2, so I'm going to come all the way over here to Layout 4. But for you guys, just click on Layout 1. And when you do that, the screen changes to be white. Right? And then you have kind of a box that's inside your screen that has your drawings in it. Okay? This is called Paperspace, where the black is called Model Space. The main idea behind Paperspace is this is a sheet of paper as if I were going to go print. Okay? And my drawing shows up on this sheet of paper, right? And when I go to print it, it's going to come out what it looks like. Okay? And so we need to go through and start to edit some of the properties. So what I'm going to do is there's a tab, there's a ribbon up here called Layout, and this gives us all of the layout options relating to what we're doing here. And we can also access a lot of these options by just right-clicking where it says Layout 4, and this will give us a lot of the same options. And what I want to do is I want to enter what's called the Page Setup Manager. And I can do that either there's a button on the ribbon that says Page Setup, or I can right-click on my layout and say Page Setup Manager. And when this comes up, it'll give me a little dialog box, and you'll see that I've got various pages that are showing up here. I'm on Layout 4. You're probably on Layout 1. It really doesn't matter. Making sure that you're on the matching layout, I'm going to click on Modify. And when I click on Modify, it brings up basically the print dialog box, right? The plot dialog box. It's called Page Setup, but it's kind of the same thing. And so there's a variety of options that I want to go ahead and pick here. Previously, we picked a printer called the DWG to JPEG, wherever that is, right? Publish to web JPEG. We picked that one. We're going to do DWG to PDF. All right? Because what we're doing is we're taking this AutoCAD drawing and we're going to make it a PDF file. And a PDF file is the ideal format to come out of AutoCAD with. It's not the ideal format to upload to the website, but it's ideal to come out of AutoCAD because when it writes the PDF file, it still keeps all of the lines as real lines. It doesn't just make an image out of it, which means that if we bring it into another program like Illustrator or InDesign, we can actually go in and edit the lines. We can add extra line weights. We can actually tweak the drawings a bit. And one of the things, one of the directions that we're going, next Monday I'll show you a bunch of collaging techniques in Illustrator that you can do with one of these PDFs. So we want to make sure we're in the DWG to PDF. down here under paper size, we have the ability to pick the size of paper that we're going to ultimately print on. And so the A size is your normal 8.5 by 11 sheet. Obviously, we're going to need more space than that for today. You're welcome to choose anything up to, I think, a size, I say a B or a C. A size D is kind of the largest that we're going to be plotting here. You're not going to have to go plot it, but if you were going to go use one of the big plotters to plot, an Arc D at 24 by 36 is kind of the biggest that we'd be going. And so I'd encourage you to pick something slightly smaller. This is somewhat dependent on how much space you need based on how big your drawing is going to be, or how big your house is, and obviously what scale you're going to draw it in. There is a B size, which is 11 by 17. I don't think my drawings are going to fit on an 11 by 17. They might. A C is kind of the next size up at 17 by 22. So you can kind of work through what feels like the right size. And if you don't like it, you can obviously come back and change the size down the road. So I'm going to pick a C to start at 17 by 22. A couple other things that we're going to make sure are set. The plot area is actually the layout because we want it to be what we see on the screen. The plot scale should be 1:1 because everything that we see here is actually how it's going to come out when we print. So that should stay at 1:1. We're not doing any scaling. The plot style table or the pen assignments, if you were working for a firm, they may have a set of pen styles that they want you to use, which correspond to certain colors in a drawing. We're going very basic, where what you see is what you get. So we're going to pick the basic AutoCAD. It's the acad.ctv file, right? And we can also check the box for display the plot styles so that we can hopefully see it live as we're working on it. Down below here we have quality. I usually set it to maximum. I don't know if it helps, but it can't hurt, right? And then the rest of these are all fine. My drawing is in landscape format right now, and I'll go ahead and say OK. And we'll see that when I do that, my page size just changed, right? So I'll go ahead and click close for now, right? And so this is now the C size sheet of paper. It's 17 inches on this side and 22 inches on this side. Okay? So if I went over to the printer and I plotted it, this would show up, right? Exactly what I see. Now, inside of this paper space, we have the ability to have what are called viewports. And these viewports are designed such that these are going to be where we do the scaling. And we can have as many or as few as we want on this particular page. So right now, if I look at this particular viewport, we can see that it's showing me all of my drawing, right? If I make the viewport bigger, I can see more of the drawing. I can move the viewport. I just type move. I can move it around on the page. Okay? Now, I don't know off the top of my head what scale this viewport is in, so I need to enter what's called the properties of this viewport so that I can see what scale it is in. So to get there, I'm going to type properties, which will bring up the properties window right here. Right? And when I get to this stage of, hold on, I'm going to have to sneeze. No, maybe not. When I get to this stage of the properties window, or kind of layout work, a lot of times I'll dock the properties window over here on the left, especially on these wider monitors, because it's helpful to just kind of keep it up because we're doing this layout stuff. And so this will tell me the properties of this viewport. And so I can see what layer it's on. And I can also come down here and I can see that it's not locked yet, and I have a standard scale of custom. And so the standard scale of custom just means that it is whatever scale it is, right? Now I want to specify that it is actually a specific scale. So I'm going to click where it says custom, and when I click where it says custom, you see that a bunch of scales show up. And so if I navigate over here to, like, say, quarter scale, it will give me a live preview of what the viewport looks like in a 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, right? I can jump up in scale, 3/8 inch equals 1 foot. I can go down in scale, right? So say an 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. You see how that kind of changes in scale? Okay, I'm going to pick a 1/4 inch equals a foot as my scale. And so now everything in this viewport is showing up as a 1/4 inch equals a foot, which is what I wanted. Okay, so I have that at 1/4 inch equals a foot. Now I'm going to go ahead and come over here to where it says display locked, and I'm going to change it to yes. Okay, that means that I'm setting the scale. It's now 1/4 inch equals a foot, and I can't change it unless I unlock the viewport. So now I can go ahead and modify this a little bit, where I'm going to shrink this down, oops, maybe not quite that much, so that it's going around my building, something like that. And so now I have a viewport that represents just the floor plan of my building. And so I can move this, sorry, I can move this just like any other object so that it's arranged somewhere on the page. Okay, and I have complete flexibility in terms of where it's going to go. So I could drop it up here, for example, like that. Okay. So now I want to go back and create another viewport that shows the elevation. Right. So let me come up here, and remember I'm in the layout ribbon, and I'm going to click on New. This is going to let me specify a new viewport, and so I'll go ahead, maybe. It's going to give me new layout. Sorry, wrong button. It's this one, rectangular viewport. It's the one next to it. All right, and so this next viewport again shows me my whole drawing. Right, this time I'm going to concentrate on just this lower elevation. I'm going to select the viewport, and once again I'm going to change the scale so that's in 1/4 inch equals a foot. Come down here, 1/4 inch equals a foot, and I'm going to go ahead and lock the viewport once I set the scale. And then I need to make some adjustments so that I see the bottom elevation here. There it is. A little further down. Alright, so now I have just the bottom elevation. I can type move, and I can move it up here. And I'm seeing that I have the floor plan and I have the bottom elevation. And the two are now independent. They're not tied together. Right? I can work with them. Now I'd like these to kind of line up so that there's some general conventions about it. It would be nice if this edge actually lined up with this. So I'm going to go ahead and move this. Notice that I can still snap to the objects that are inside of my viewports. And we'll drop this down like that. And now those two line up along their edge, and so we can kind of see how this building is coming together. Right? I can shrink this viewport down a little bit more. I don't need all the extra space. Like that. Something like that. Okay? So now I have this elevation here. Now I want to continue on and create the same views, right, for each of the rest of the elevations. Right? And so I have a couple options. One, I can come up here to rectangular viewport, and I can make another viewport, something like this. And if I were to look at this viewport, right, I can specify the scale once again. Let's go to 1/4 inch equals a foot. There it is. And let me go ahead and lock it. Yes. All right. So let's come over here. And let's take a quick look at my elevation. Okay, so I drew this in a conventional manner. I'm just putting it over here so you can see it. But it's oriented 90 degrees from the direction I want it to be. Okay? So it's okay, but I would really rather have it oriented correctly. So what I want to do is I want to make a transformation inside this viewport in that I want, right, the viewport to display rotated. Right? And so I'm going to use a command that's called MV setup. And it's written down here under step 9 on your exercise 123 handout. So I'm going to type MV setup, right? And it's going to give me some options. So I'm going to pick align, right? And then rotate view. And again, all of this is written out. It's going to say specify a base point in the viewport. So I'm just going to pick in the center of the viewport. And then I have to specify an angle, right? And these are in absolute rotations. So it's not based on where you were previously, just an absolute rotation. So I'm going to try, I think 90, it's going to rotate, it's minus 90, except that I think I actually have to put in 270. I'm going all the way around. So I'm going to specify 270. Maybe not. Maybe it is minus 90. Can be. hold on 1 second. MV setup, align, rotate view, there. We're going to go, see if negative 90 will work. Where is it? Yeah, I think I'm missing 1 click, sorry. Rotate view, there. Isn't that nice? Oh, you know what? It's locked. I have to unlock it. Sorry. So let me come over here and unlock it. That's why it's not going to let me. There we go. So it's not locked. So we'll repeat MV setup. Align, rotate view, right? 270. And now it's changed my orientation or my rotation, right, to be basically 270 degrees from where I was. Which allows me to have this elevation, right, reoriented in this direction. So let me go ahead and move this up. Right? So now I want to do this again, right, for the other 2 remaining views. And this is good practice anyway, so you can watch me go through it. Right? So I'll go ahead and I'll draw another viewport. And again, I have this. Right? This time I'm not going to zoom in just quite yet because I want you to see this as it goes. Right? So this time I want this view, so I'm going to type MV setup, align, rotate view. There's my base point. This time it's going to be 180. Right? See how it rotates the whole view the opposite direction? Right? Now I want to change my scale. So let me select my object. We're going to change my scale to 1/4 inch equals a foot. Perfect. And so let me go ahead and lock this view, and then we'll adjust the view. There we go. Got a little bit more. I can see this. This can get a little bit shorter. Okay. We'll go ahead and move this up over here. Alright, so now I have that view. So I have one last elevation to set up. So once again, I'll come back here to rectangular. I should point out that there are other options, like if you didn't want a rectangular viewport, you can have one that you create a custom polygon, right? So if you wanted something that wasn't just a rectangle, if you wanted to cut something out, you could do that as well. But we'll stick with rectangular. One more right here. So once again, MV setup, align, rotate view. We'll click inside here. This one's going to be 90. You can see it rotates my view for me. And then we need to adjust my scale. Let me select it. Now, I want to point out one thing. And that is that these viewports are actually active so that I could get inside and make edits. And one of the reasons that I'm emphasizing locking your viewport after you set the scale is if you were to double click inside the viewport, it will let you in to this viewport. See how it gets a little bit more bold? And then I can zoom in and zoom out inside the viewport. But notice that when I do that, it changes the scale. Right? So if I set the scale and don't lock it, and I accidentally go in and try to edit something, it's going to let me zoom in and zoom out, and then my scale isn't set anymore. And so we want to make sure that we set the scale first. Let me just, this is the elevation we want. So I'll select it, set my scale at 1/4 inch equals a foot. There it is. Make a few adjustments here. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and lock the viewport. Now, since it's locked, right, I can still go in and I can still make adjustments to these lines. I can work on it. But when I zoom in and zoom out, it zooms the page in and page out, as opposed to the viewport. And so locking it is always a really good idea. Okay, so I have these laid out. I want to do a little bit more layout work and get these to line up nicely. I already lined up this edge there. So let's go ahead and do a few more adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and go back to home. I'm going to draw a couple lines, and I'm going to switch to my guides layer since it's a non-printing layer, and just give myself a little bit of extra help here. Come on. The keyboard stopped working. Come on. Yeah. There we go. So, alright, so I want to move this down a little bit. So that lines up there. And then I'll also give myself a guide. I can do this just with some of the projection lines, but sometimes it's easier to set it up with an actual guideline here. Alright, let me take this. And I'm just going to move this. So this goes over to there. Move this down a little bit more, give it a little bit of space between them. Move this one. Move. Here, so all three of those line up now, right? I'd like the heights of these two to line up, so let's move this one. Alright, so I did a little bit of layout work to get those to kind of line up nicely. They look okay right now. It's a little bit confusing because you've got these different viewports. And if I were to go ahead and print this right now, so let me go ahead and plot it so you can see the results. Right, all the settings were preset. We already did this, so I can go ahead and say OK. It's going to ask me where to save it. We'll just save it to the desktop for right now. And if I look at it, okay, the grids go away. Right? But I still end up with the lines that go around my viewports, and I really want those to go away as well. So what I need to do is I need to put each of these viewports on a non-printing layer. And so I tend to create a layer, so I'm going to go to Layer Properties, create a new layer, and I call it No Print. I have my guides layer, but I think when you start working in Paperspace, it's helpful to have a No Print layer. I'm going to turn it to No Print, and then I'm going to change the color. And for whatever reason, I pick green as my no print. All right, and then I'm going to take each of these viewports, and I'm going to drop them onto that no print layer there. And now, when I go back to plot, it'd be helpful if you let me. There it is. You see that those borders went away, right? And so this is ultimately what we want, where we have a PDF that has none of those borders. We have things that have been lined up nicely. We've got our floor plan, right? And it may take a little bit of tweaking to get this to look exactly like you would like, but this is basically where we're going. A couple other things. In this view, this is where all of your line types are going to actually, or line weights are going to show up. So if we look at any one of these drawings, as I zoom in, we can see that I've added line weights to various parts of the lines, right? I should actually print out one of those samples of an elevation view so you can see how I did the line weights on that. Generally, things that are closer to you are thicker, right? So that part of the building was a little bit thicker than this part of the building, right? Which helps add to the elevation view slightly. Obviously, I already gave you the line weights for here. If you want something to have a dashed line, it's available up here in your properties. So if we double click and get in here, I can choose it from the list of line types, right? If it's not displayed here, so for example, if hidden 2 wasn't displayed, I can click on other, and I can click on load, and this is where all of the AutoCAD line types exist. So we've got tons and tons and tons of lines. I really like the hidden 2 line. It's this one. So I usually load that one. Let me go ahead and cancel that. So it's available there. I also have a phantom line loaded. And so that allows me to do the little dashed border. This dashed border will not show up in the model space. Right? So if we jump back to model space, go ahead and close this. No, never mind. Conveniently, there's model. So that dash line isn't showing in model space, right? Because it's designed to show in Paperspace in that scale. So let me jump back to layout 4. Right, here I am. This is the view where we tend to add things like dimensions and text and that sort of thing. If you want to add dimensions, they're available under the Annotate ribbon. And I'll let you guys play around with that if you want. It's not required for anything that we're doing in the class, but it is available here. There's something called dimension, and that will let you create the dimensions. There's also dimension properties and getting the fonts right and that sort of thing. So in general, in my own AutoCAD world and practice, I would set up drawings like this with any dimensions that needed to be on the page, but without any primary text, because I'd like to add that in Illustrator afterwards. So I'll show you how I do that. I try to get all the line weights correct. I try to get the general layouts correct. And then I deal with title blocks and all of that stuff in the world of the Adobe products, whether it's in Illustrator or in InDesign after the fact. So I know this is a lot to take in, it's a lot to get used to, but at the same time, I think it's one of the more valuable things to learn and really understand in the world of AutoCAD, because this is ultimately how you're going to get your product out. And to be able to work with the viewports really gives you the flexibility long term in terms of creating the actual output. You know, if you're creating posters or any of that kind of stuff, this is really what you want. Okay? Are there any questions about this? No? I'm going to take this one step further just so that you see the process of coming into Illustrator. And I'm actually going to ask you to do this, not to do any editing today, unless you have lots of extra time, but just so that you get used to the process. I went ahead and I saved this. So to get the output, remember, I have the viewport showing, and I go to the plot icon, the printer, and basically I say OK, because all the settings are preset. And then it's going to let me save it. And so theoretically, I'll save it to the desktop or to my flash drive. Sorry. Trying to fight the sneeze. Okay, so I go ahead and say OK. And it's going to give me that output onto the desktop. Then I can go ahead and I can open that output in Illustrator. So I'm going to go to the Start menu. It would be nice if I could just double click it, but remember we have to actually open Illustrator CS6 because it's not the default. And then I'll go to the File menu and I'll say Open. And there it is. And when this comes in, right, well, it's on its side, but we can see that I actually have, right, all of these as actual lines. So if I zoom in, right, I can click on any one of these lines, right, and then ultimately double click and I can adjust any one of those lines. So having a live line drawing coming into Illustrator out of AutoCAD is really, really useful. And we'll talk about how to collage and that sort of stuff later. Once you're done, though, you can go to File, Save for Web, and you'll save a web version of this file. This is what you're going to post on the course website today, right? So you end up posting a JPEG even though you created a PDF out of AutoCAD. Does that make sense? You're just going to wrap it through Illustrator, create the actual output. Okay? So if you struggle with that, I'll help walk you through it. Okay? So I'll turn you loose. If you have any questions, by all means ask. I'll try my very best to point today and not actually touch anything so that I don't get you sick.